Welcome to another edition of Driven to Lead. I'm your host, Wayne Brannon. In this program, we explore the real stories from key executives to find the leadership lessons that drove their success, whether in good times or bad. We got a great program for you today, so let's make it happen. We got a great show today. We have with us Brendan O'Donnell, who's the president and CEO of DFA of California and of Safe Food Alliance out of Sacramento. Brendan is an amazing executive who's got a long time commitment to the food industry and to food safety. But I think even more interesting, he's got a long time commitment to California and its food industry, which is incredibly important because, as we'll learn today in talking with Brendan, a tremendous percentage of the world's products in specialty foods comes out of the great state of California. Brendan, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, welcome to the program. It's a treat for us to learn about different areas of business and organizational structure that drives things that are important to us. And it's always great to hear from key executives and tease out the leadership lessons that this program is focused on. But before we get started with a key story from you, tell me about DFA and the Safe Food Alliance from the perspective of why do we care about what happens in California and food safety?
Yeah, sure. Well, DFA, first of all, is a really old organization. So we are coming up on 118 years old here in February. And we started off really to support the nuts and dried fruit industry, mostly the dried fruit industry, if you go back that far. And really, our history has been morphing into whatever the industry needs us to be. So at the beginning, it was negotiating rail rates in between California and the East Coast in order to get prunes and raisins from, across the country. And then it slowly turned into more of a grading organization where we were physically inspecting these food products and saying, okay, this is a U.S. #1 and it is this much damage and this color and, giving it its quality characteristics.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's something that even today we still do. That's still a decent size of our business. But as the industry has grown, the industry has different needs. And over the last 100 years, we've changed from needing this negotiating rail rates, which of course is still important, but now, of course, food safety is such an important thing. And making sure that the food products that are coming from our members are getting to the consumers that are safe and healthy and nutritious, and you don't have to worry about it. So along that line, we have training and consulting services where we'll work with our members to make sure that their policies are in place, that they've got all the correct food safety programs, everything's going to be a safe product that comes out of that plant. We also do the auditing. It has to be a separate business because you have to have a certain, distance
Arm's
from
length
it.
relationship. Yep.
Exactly. And so those are the people that physically go into the plants and they audit the plants. Sometimes it's like a 3 or 5 day audit. It's a long, in-depth process. And we've got some fantastic auditors that work on that team. And then, of course, we built food safety laboratories. And so this is one where a lot of times when the shipments are created or they're getting ready to go out, we'll test for things like pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria. We'll check for mycotoxins like aflatoxin or ochratoxin. And we'll even check for pesticide residues. And these are really, really intense machines. I mean, each one of these instruments that you use for testing pesticide residues, they're like $500,000 instruments, and they can test, hundreds of millions they test in parts per billion of certain, pesticides. So, but these are all things that were developed because the industry needed them. So they either needed to access new markets, or they needed to comply with the rules, or they needed to be able to sell products to Japan where they're really strict on certain things, or sell products to Europe where they're really strict on certain things. And so we've really just built this business to help support those members, pretty much whatever they need.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you were telling me when we spoke previously, you were telling me about the percentage of some products that come from
Oh
California.
yeah.
If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, you told me 80% of almonds in the
Yeah.
world come
Yeah.
from California.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's kind of wild. It's probably between 75 and 80 today. But,
Hmm.
if you think about almonds, It's really difficult to grow almonds. And I say that because you have to have the right conditions during winter. You have to have the right number of chill hours, but then bloom comes in February. So it can't be,
Mhm.
ice and snow and stuff in February
Right.
during the bloom when the
Right.
bees need to be flying and they need to be pollinating the
Sure.
trees. So you have to be able to really have this special environment to do that. You can't have soils that are too heavy clay because you'll basically drown the tree. The summertime, you don't want too much rain in the summer because you
Mhm.
create more mold issues and stuff like that. So you think about California's climate and you think, okay, it's cold, but not too cold. Check. You get moisture in the winter, like check. You don't get too
Mhm.
much rain in the summer, check. It's all
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
things that make it the perfect place to do it. So there's
Right.
really only a couple other places in the world where you can grow almonds. The next largest are Australia and Spain after California. But
Mm.
yeah, California is the powerhouse of almonds. We're supplying between 75 and 80% of the global supply of almonds. And
Yeah, it's
it's not just
amazing.
almonds either. I mean, almonds are
Yeah.
important
I was going
and
to ask you
huge.
about the proportion of fruits and nuts in general that we get from California.
So the thing that always really surprises me is that 40% of all of the nuts in the world are produced in
Mhm.
California. So that's going beyond
Wow.
almonds. You're talking about like
Yeah.
walnuts and pistachios and everything else.
Okay.
For California specifically, those are really the big three: California almonds, walnuts, and
Hmm.
pistachios. Pistachios have grown unbelievably,
Hmm.
especially recently. I'm sure you've noticed it as well. Like pistachios are everywhere,
Yes.
right? And you've
Yeah.
got
Yeah, they
Dubai
are. Absolutely.
chocolate,
The demand
everything.
for them has grown in the last 10, 15 years
Yeah,
tremendously just by the number of products you see and then the
yeah,
uh, the number of bags on the shelves of the
right.
grocery stores and things because
Yeah,
people are buying these things. And
yeah.
they've actually become a little bit more affordable. I mean, is that because of the volume that's being produced now? Does that help? Is scalability or does
Yeah,
it make it more difficult?
the affordability piece of it is a tricky thing because there are a lot of producers, growers here in California that are really
Mhm.
struggling. And they're struggling for a lot of reasons. The cost of production is significantly more expensive. The cost of water availability. There's a lot of places where you used to be able to get water and now you can't get water. The labor cost in California is really, really expensive. So, I mean, we've
Mhm.
got minimum wage in a lot of parts of California are $20 an hour now.
Wow.
And you figure you have we just call it a burden, but basically like the extra cost of having an employee, you got to add another 40% or something onto that. So,
Yeah.
if you have a crop that requires a lot of labor, then your costs are just going through the roof. So we've got a lot of our growers and a lot of processors are constantly looking for ways that they can try to improve efficiency, make things more efficient, and if they can do that by reducing some labor, then they would love to do that. So yeah, it's hard because yes, these are products that are really important, that are delicious, and I'm so happy that they're getting into more hands of more people because the price is lower.
Sure.
But on the other hand, it's like some of
Yeah.
these growers are really having a hard time. So yeah, but they are growing. They're going into new markets, expanding markets. Uh, a lot of people that are consuming these nuts. This is actually kind of another interesting thing for you. Almost all of the nuts in the world are consumed by middle and upper class economies.
Mm.
So essentially, like the really poor areas, they don't eat nuts. So when you're looking at the future of the nuts industry, you're specifically looking at the growth of middle class and upper class economies, which is why people in the nuts industry get so excited when they think about what the future of India might become or the future of
Hmm.
China as you're
Sure.
starting to get more of a shift from like a poverty level or a low income level
Right.
into a
To a
middle
middle
class
class.
level.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
the consumption for things like nuts is absolutely going through the roof. So
And nutritionally, nuts are an especially good product from a health standpoint,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
I mean, they're good
absolutely.
fats,
Yeah,
protein.
yeah.
So it's efficient calories and a pretty interesting product. Are there other things that are kind of really important in that fruit and nut industry as we're talking about it to make sure that the you can meet the standards of various parts of the world. You mentioned in your opening remarks that
Yeah,
you have these very precise measuring capabilities in terms of looking for pesticides and
right.
disease and those kinds of things. do you need to be expert in all of the requirements for all of the nations that you're shipping to, and then make sure you're within those tolerances, and then I assume provide some sort of regulatory documentation to those countries
Yeah,
before you ship and
yeah.
all that? I mean, the level of complexity seems to be high there. Maybe talk to us about that for a minute.
Yeah, all of the above of what you just said is true. So there are really complex, trades that are happening between different countries. Different countries have different requirements.
Mm.
Something like aflatoxin, for example, which is it's essentially a residue that's left behind after a mold.
Okay.
If you've never heard of aflatoxin before, the area where you might have heard of it is that you have sometimes seen some things where you get aflatoxin in like dog food, and pets are
Mm.
dying from it. Usually it comes from like a
Mm.
moldy corn or something like that. But
Okay.
anyway, long story short, it's a residue from a mold that can be a toxin. It can be a dangerous thing.
Hmm.
But a lot of countries have different tolerance levels. So you might have one area that says you can have, 20 parts per million. Another part says 10 parts per million. Another part says 5 parts per million. So you have to be able
Hmm.
to test to these different levels and be able to, offer that official certificate. They call it a certificate of
Hmm.
analysis that goes to the importer in this case.
So
Yeah.
that raises an interesting question, at least in my mind. So let's say you have this variation from 20 parts per million down to 5 parts per million
Yeah.
across a number of countries and maybe everything in between. So do you then segregate your product if you have product that will be certified for some and not for others, even though your local standard in California might be 3 parts per million? So do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
actually export things that don't meet your local standards, but that will meet the requirements of a foreign government?
Yeah. That
That's a sticky
that's
one,
so
isn't
much.
it?
Well, it
That's a
is, but
sticky
it's
one.
also so much less likely that that would be an issue where you're talking about something like aflatoxin, because for the
Hmm.
most part, everything's coming in really low.
Okay.
You're not finding a lot of aflatoxin. That's not really something that, at least in the nuts industry, should be like a high level of
Okay.
concern for consumers.
Okay.
The
Good.
area that gets really interesting is it has to do with like quality characteristics and parameters that people
Hmm.
want. So, for example, the everybody knows that the Japanese markets are very demanding, right? No matter what industry you're in,
Right.
the markets are very demanding. And one of the things that I thought was so funny about selling into the Japanese markets, I used to sell almonds as well before I did this, is that the Japanese market would buy the most perfect almond. It would be exactly the right size. There would be no chips or scratches or scuffles or anything on
Hmm.
it. It would look like an almond that you would put in a photo shoot, and you'd
Okay.
ship it to Japan and they'd cover it in chocolate. So you don't even see the almond.
Right. Yeah.
but it's got to be
Mhm.
perfect, right? It's got to be
Right.
perfect. Other markets like the Middle East also has a very, very high demand for what the product looks like,
Right.
and also the sizing of the product. So if you were selling
Hmm.
almonds, you would sell what your middle-sized, most beautiful almonds. Those would be the ones for Japan. The largest
Hmm.
almonds would be the ones for the Middle East. You have all these different markets that buy different things for different
Right.
reasons. But yeah, it's kind of funny because if you're working in the nuts business, um, the absolute best nuts that you're producing are almost all exported because they're willing to pay for it. The domestic market, at least here in the U.S., typically what you see is that Americans really value the flavor, and they really value the nutrition, and they really value the food safety, but we value less the aesthetics of the product. And so
Hmm.
typically, and I'm speaking very generally because I'm sure there are people that really want a beautiful almond, but
Yeah.
in general, as a market, we are not willing to pay that extra dollar for the most beautiful almonds. We just want them
Right.
to taste good and be healthy and be safe and all of those things.
Right. Well, I have to say though, I won't mention this specific big box food retailer that I'm thinking about, but I buy bags of cashews there and bags of mixed nuts that are
Yeah.
incredibly good value. And these
Yeah.
cashews are large and they're mostly perfect in terms of their appearance, and they're not split open and they don't have chips
Mhm.
out of them. And yet they're a great value for the money. Where do these things come from? Do they come from California as well?
No, 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 no. Cashews are much more of like a tropical environment type
Okay.
type of a product. Cashews are, I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole to dive into with cashews. It's
Okay.
fascinating, absolutely
Who
fascinating.
knew? Who knew?
Cashews, it's wild. So cashews come, there's a lot that are in Vietnam,
Mhm.
Cambodia, Thailand, that area, Southeast Asia. There's a lot of cashews. But the primary production area of cashews is actually
Mhm.
Western Africa. So you get into
Okay.
like Ivory Coast and Ghana, those
Hmm.
areas.
Hmm. Cote
And
d'Ivoire.
it's so dispersed, and you've got farmers that have 5 trees, and they gather their product, and that goes to one guy that gathers the product
Mm.
from 10 farmers. He gets it to another guy that gathers
Wow.
the product from those farmers, and a
Mm.
lot of them end up shipping their products to Vietnam, from Africa to Vietnam,
Okay.
which is not
Okay.
close,
Interesting.
right?
No, it's
Um,
not close at all.
because that's where all of the cracking is, and that's where a lot of the labor is. And cashews are
Okay.
incredibly labor intensive.
Really?
So
Okay.
not only are they labor intensive in the factories where you have to crack them, but just in the harvesting. So
Okay.
a cashew is grown. They call it a cashew apple, as a fruit that's on the
Hmm.
cashew, and that
Okay.
little C-shaped nut is growing out of the bottom of that cashew apple. And so you've
Okay.
got people walking through fields with these baskets that are just picking the apples. So they pick the
Hmm.
apples, and you basically just twist the nut off the bottom of the apple. And
Hmm.
there are markets for these cashew apples. People eat them. There is some nutrition to
Yeah.
them, but they're not like fantastic, right? I mean, it's not something
Okay.
that we really would be looking to eat, but
Okay.
they do provide nutrition, and they are consumed
Hmm.
in places.
Okay.
But the cashews are another reason cashews are wild is that there's a very hard shell, and inside the shell, you have a very it's like an acidic oil that is in between the shell, or it's kind of like in the shell and before you get to the nut. And so
Yeah.
when you're cracking these cashews, a lot of times they're done by hand, because the machinery to crack the cashews is complicated, mostly because of the shape of the cashew and things like that.
Hmm.
And so you just have rooms of thousands of people, in India, in Vietnam, that are cracking cashews. They're peeling them apart, and they've got to wear, multi layers of gloves because of the acidity in these cashews.
Okay.
So yeah, it's that whole industry. The
Wow.
cashew industry is a wild thing. And then you think
How
about where
many
those
people?
cashews have traveled
Yeah.
to get here in the United States, and they've
Yeah.
gone from, Western Africa to Vietnam
Yeah.
to New York or whatever. They've traveled all over the world.
I just feel
Yeah.
compelled to let my audience know how lucky we are to have someone who knows so much about fruits and nuts. If we ever have any more questions, about anything anywhere in the world, we're calling you, Brendan. Okay, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's fascinating. Let me ask you a couple of serious questions. In every industry, in every category, there's some challenges and some opportunities. If you look first across the industry, that you're in the food industry or the fruits and nuts business for California, or you look across your own organization, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing, and what are some of the biggest opportunities?
So challenges are going to be a lot of what I mentioned earlier when it comes to labor cost and trying to find ways to do things more efficiently.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, there's so much opportunity, and I'll talk about the opportunities in a second. But just as far as the challenges, we've got to figure out how to produce a product that's better and better and better, right? Consumer demands are never going backwards, they're only going forwards. Once you can produce a product that is at this level,
Yeah,
this is now the baseline. And now you've got to be able to produce a product that's better. And that's now the
right.
baseline, and then better. So it's this kind of like a staircase,
Hmm.
infinite staircase of consumer demands. So that's a challenge for sure. And in order to do that, you've got to make a lot of investments in these plants. So you have
Hmm.
high-tech machinery. The company I was at before this is a company that produced these like optical sorting machines, lasers,
Hmm.
cameras, all these things that are looking at the product as it goes through there, and they're trying to remove things like if it sees a rock or a piece of dirt or something, it blows a little blast of air and it knocks it away from the rest of the product. And so
Hmm.
people have to invest more and more and more in
Right.
this product in order to do that. So I'd say that's one of the challenges. That is a challenge, and then of course, like the regulatory environment and being able to get the product where it needs to go,
Right.
especially now with trade and tariffs, and India
Hmm.
has a 100% tariff on California walnuts.
Hmm.
So India is a huge market, right? I mean, and we just
Right.
talked about the growth of the middle class and how much they can eat,
Hmm.
but
Right.
the tariff on walnuts is 100%. So
Do they have a
it's
local walnut
kind
kind
of,
of production that
yeah,
they're protecting, or what are they doing?
yeah, that's exactly the right thing to think. And you're
Hmm.
right, but it's a very, very, very small production, and it's a
Mm.
very it doesn't look like what you would think of as a walnut. Like it's kind of
Oh,
this
really?
native species of walnut. It's actually produced like more in the Kashmir region, closer to
Hmm.
Pakistan,
Hmm.
and so it's very, very small volumes, but yes, I mean, to answer your question, yes, they are protected. Does
Hmm.
100% tariff make sense? Like, absolutely not. You know, so
Yeah.
yeah, but
Interesting.
there's barriers to trade. That's a
Hmm.
challenge. The cost
Yeah.
of doing business is expensive, and your consumer demands are just constantly getting tougher and tougher and tougher. So those are some of your big challenges.
Hmm.
Your opportunities are that we're producing a food product that is phenomenal. It's phenomenal as far as nutrition. It's phenomenal as far as like flavor and taste, whether you're talking about like almonds, walnuts, pistachios, or the dried fruit that we produce here, prunes,
Hmm.
figs, raisins. Like, we do a lot here that are the best in the world. We're the best
Hmm.
in the world at producing these products that are the top level of quality, the top level of food safety, and
Hmm.
knowing that it's something that's really nutritious is something that we really have going for us. So I recently have joined this board for the American Cancer Society. It's a Cultivate program is what we're calling it.
Hmm.
And what's really interesting is that a lot of times when people get cancer, they might be in a place where they have food security. They know where their next meal is coming from. But after going through the cost of cancer, they become food insecure. And so we're trying to create these programs that essentially teach people how to cook and teach people how to cook using healthy ingredients, oftentimes cancer fighting ingredients like
Yeah.
nuts and dried fruit, which there's a lot of studies in a lot of different places that could, I think there's one that ties walnuts to prostate cancer and another one that, there's a lot of really wonderful research that's been done on these products. So knowing that that's something that's really healthy, like a good, healthy, natural product is
Hmm.
is probably the best thing we've got going for us, and people want to eat them because they're delicious.
Right. Yeah. So just to clarify, you said ties walnuts to prostate cancer. It ties walnuts to being a prevention
Yeah, yeah.
element
Let's
for
make that
prostate
super
cancer.
clear. Yeah,
Yeah, I want to make that
absolutely.
clear because
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
explaining fast. I wanted to make sure there was no
yeah,
misinterpretation of that.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No,
it's a healthy product
it's
to
all
eat.
about cancer prevention, and it's
Right.
about prevention through nutrition, and
Right.
how
That's
eating
fascinating.
healthy can reduce the chances that somebody were to get cancer. And
Yeah. So it
nuts
seems
and
to me
dried fruit are
that
part of that diet.
yeah, so it seems to me that with both the challenges and the opportunities that you just enumerated there, that consumer awareness, maybe even governing body awareness of these kinds of
Yeah.
opportunities is going to be critical for you. Do you have a public relations and marketing kind of approach that helps you to get the word out? Because I know I'm learning a lot today about
Yeah.
fruits and nuts and nutrition and benefits and the kind of places where we're producing and how important California is. It seems like you got a story to tell and you need to tell it well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have a marketing team, a fantastic marketing team, but we don't directly go into the political side of things too much. Instead, we partner with the people that are already doing that, and they're doing a wonderful job.
Good.
And there are several organizations here in California. I mean, the California Walnut Commission does a wonderful job with that. The Almond Alliance does a wonderful job there. So, and there's a lot of organizations out there that we try to help and support as much as we
Okay.
can. So if they need some of the data to back up some findings, we can help them with that. If they need pesticide residue testing to show how safe a product is, we
Sure.
can help them with that.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of what they do is also tied to regulatory policy, and especially with water. And
Hmm.
so a lot of you probably have heard that a lot of nuts and dried fruit got a difficult reputation over water use in the past 10 years or so.
Hmm.
But what's really interesting about that is that food takes water, like the bottom line,
Of
right?
course.
So it doesn't
Yep.
matter whether or not you're talking about almonds or walnuts or lettuce or strawberry, like whatever it is, food takes water.
Or livestock or anything. I mean, everything takes water.
Everything takes water. And I think it's sometimes surprising how much water things take.
Hmm.
But the way that we can really maximize the benefit is by making sure that every single piece of that tree or of that crop goes to use. So you're talking about a million acres of almonds in California that are doing carbon sequestration, right?
Hmm.
They're making the air cleaner. They're pulling
Hmm.
carbon out of the air. They're
Right.
depositing into the ground.
Sure.
These are the kinds of things that it's like we need to be talking more about some of the positive environmental benefits that we
Right.
get from these crops as well. So,
Hmm.
and for nuts and dried fruit, you're primarily talking about permanent crops, trees,
Yeah.
that really help do that kind of
Sure.
thing.
Well, I've always been an advocate of any sort of analysis we do, whether it's relative to fuel usage or it's relative to production of any product. In this case, you're talking about the production of the crops. I think we should do a
Mm.
holistic analysis of the entire chain, the whole
Yeah.
circle of life, so to speak, that talks about the aggregate benefits and disadvantages. And so I think that's important. Let's turn the page here a little bit. We could probably talk about fruits and nuts for a long time, but maybe you have a story that's related as well. In this program, as you know, we look for the stories from key executives like yourself
Yeah.
that could potentially, give us some insights into some of the leadership aspects of running an organization, leading an organization that are important. So tell us a story, Brendan. Set it up for us. Help us understand what you're talking about, and let's go through it and let's see what we can find.
Yeah. I think, if you're looking at kind of what my leadership journey has been like, I would look a lot towards experiences that have shown me like grit and determination, like figuring out how to just get through it when times are tough. And then I would
Mm-hmm.
also focus on things that were really focused on communication.
Mm-hmm.
So first with communication, I took public, it started off in high school. I did a public speaking course that I really loved, and it always made me really scared. But I also got a lot of positive feedback, so I kind of leaned
Mm-hmm.
into that. And then at UC Davis, I was in a program called the California Aggie Ambassadors, which promotes the College of Ag at UC Davis, and there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
additional public speaking there. One of the things that I think probably gave me the most confidence in public speaking was an internship. And it was shortly after one internship was ending over summer college internship, and I was at the California State Fair, and I was introduced to this woman named Sandra Wallace, who owned a company called Barn Tours. And
Okay.
Barn Tours was a company that was hired by fairs and expositions around the country to teach people about the farm animals. So you have a little red tent that you set up in front of in front of the animals, and each one of these tour guides, which I was a tour guide, you get
Mm-hmm.
this red shirt and it says Barn Tours, and you get a microphone with with the speaker hanging over your shoulder. And so this was an experience where you have to figure out how to do public speaking pretty much all day, every day. And it was wonderful. It was just an absolutely wonderful experience. And the thing that I appreciated the most is that it tried to make it interesting for people. So on the side of this tent, you would have these questions about, what animal can turn its head blue,
Mm-hmm.
or, things like that. And so, of course, what animal can turn its head blue is a turkey. And a turkey, by the way, lost to the bald eagle by one congressional vote to become the national bird for the United States
Oh
because
my. So the
not
whole
only will
thing
it
of
turn its head,
soaring with eagles and working with turkeys could have been flipped around.
it could have been flipped around. Yeah. And I mean, people like Thomas Jefferson fought for the turkey. And they said, hey, this
Wow.
animal can turn its head red, white, and blue, and it'll fight to its death to remain free. Like we should
Well,
have the turkey.
whoever fought to put it on the Thanksgiving table won, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably true. So, so it was a job where every summer for the next 3 summers, you get the microphone, you put the speaker on, and you walk people through the barn, and you talk
Mm-hmm.
to them about goats and sheep and chicken and cows and all the kind of stuff. So, actually, the other, you were saying that. you could quiz me on anything with nuts or dried fruit, but the thing that my friends always tease me about is that you quiz me on anything that has to do with farm animals. Like,
Farm animals.
yeah,
Wow.
what's the name of a baby rabbit or something? I'll be like, it's a kit,
Mhm. Yeah. Wow.
So things like that. And a lot of it had to do with that job, and that type of public speaking.
So what you're
So,
saying there is that practice in front of an
oh,
audience at an
yeah,
early age gave you an ability of public speaking that has served you well in your leadership.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Repetition, being comfortable speaking in front of people. Actually, I would still tell you that today I'm not that comfortable, but I get positive feedback. And so I continue to do it. And I continue to keep trying and always take lessons out of every time I do something. So anytime I have to speak, I get super, super nervous beforehand. And then
Uh,
I end up doing it. And then I come off afterwards and people are like, wow, you just seem so comfortable and at ease. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad I'm glad it's coming across that way. It's not how it feels.
yeah, I was just going to
But
say that. I think you're
yeah.
doing a pretty good job today. So let's go on. You also have a story about grit and determination.
So the grit and determination. Now remember, most of my career had been in sales. So I was selling,
Mhm.
selling rice, selling almonds, selling optical sorting machines. And I think anybody that has had a career in sales has that first sales job that you have to do in order to get the experience. And it's usually a horrible, like really difficult job. And for me, I was working at a cheese plant and I wanted to do sales. And it was one of those things like, hey, we need a sales guy, but we need someone with experience. So it's like,
Mhm.
I got to find experience. So I took a job that was 100% commission based, door to door sales,
Wow.
selling credit card machines to shop owners, things like that.
Yeah.
And I started doing that here in Sacramento, and then the company decided they were going to move to Miami and then to Nashville, and I was just like, hey, I don't have I'm not married or anything like that, so let's just go experience that.
Mhm.
So I lived in I spent it was actually just one summer that I spent in Miami, which you're in South Florida, right? Or
Right. Southwest Florida.
yeah,
I'm in
yeah.
Naples, just across the Alligator Alley, about 2 hours from
Oh,
Miami.
okay. All right. So,
Yeah.
but you'll appreciate the summer
Yeah.
climate.
Yeah.
So,
I used to live over there as well. I lived just north of Miami for a number of years, 7 years. So
so
familiar
I
with all of
spent
South Florida.
I spent a summer in Miami wearing a suit, walking from
Oh
business
my.
to business outside
Oh my.
every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
And
like California in the summer. I mean, we get
no,
some tropical humidity here, right? So
exactly.
it's,
Yeah, absolutely tropical. So,
you were
and
soaked.
in
Your
this
suit
type
was
of
soaked
business,
every day. You
100%,
completely, yeah.
100%.
And see, I
And
thought you
not
were
only
100% a California guy, so you actually spent some Florida time.
I've spent time. I mean, I was only there for a summer. I mean, I've been
Yeah,
back a couple times, but I
right.
was only there for a summer. And but I spent that summer in a suit, going from business to business
Did you sell anything? Brendan, did you
you know
sell
what?
anything? That's what I want to know.
I was. They had a magazine that had like the best sales reps in the country,
Yeah.
and I ended up in that magazine. I think out of just like sheer determination, because it was
Wow.
just, you
Congrats.
get told no over and over and over and
Right.
over and over again. In that type of business, if you get one no out of, or like one yes out of 50 no's, that's
Hmm.
successful.
Yeah.
And trying to like reframe your way of thinking into,
Hmm.
it's not about like, am I terrible or whatever? It's, am I following the system? Am I doing it
Hmm.
right? And as long as I
Hmm.
just keep going on this system, eventually I'll get to that point where I'm getting a yes. And
Yeah.
it was hard work. I mean, it was 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I learned about something from some of my other coworkers, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. I am now more familiar with it after we had kids, but it's called
Hmm.
Boudreaux's butt paste. Are you familiar with Boudreaux's butt paste?
No,
It's
I'm
basically
happy to
like
say
diaper
that I'm
rash.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got more and more familiar with it after we had kids,
Okay.
because it's a diaper rash type thing, right?
Yeah.
And but boy,
Yeah.
it was certainly helpful for a summer in Miami as well.
Yeah. Well, I admire that experience that you had because, it's hard to find examples in current times
Yeah.
of people who will go out in 95 plus degree heat with 90% humidity in a suit and go door to door. I mean, could you really
Yeah.
find people who would do that for 12 hours a day and get 50 no's
Yeah.
for every yes? So good on you that you had that level of grit and determination. I understand why you put it that way, but it also, as you said, it helped you to reframe your perspective to make sure that the no's didn't tear down your self-image, that you realize the no's were part of the process.
Yeah.
And, when I coach people, I talk about it's important to realize that nobody should define you except for you and your
Mm,
God.
mm,
And, other than that, all the rest of us, we can have an opinion about you, but
yeah.
that opinion doesn't define who you are. So you were in the heavy duty hard work of defining
Yeah.
yourself in the face of others telling you you were worthless to get out of my shop.
Yeah.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
It did. I
Yeah.
mean, it felt a lot like that,
Hmm.
but I think you're right. I mean, no one can tell you you're worthless except for you, right? So yeah, that's the
I'm
hardest thing
interested.
out of that. I think the hardest thing out of that is like, how do you give that to other people? Or how do you get other people to go along that same thing? And I think, at least for me, it was understanding like what's in it in the long run, kind of like what's the why behind, why am I doing this to
Mhm.
myself, and knowing that each time you're going through this is a lesson, you're getting better, you're getting better, you're getting better. Um, and that's something that I still work really hard today on trying to figure out like, well, what's the purpose of what we're doing and what is it that's going to motivate you so that you can feel like you can get hit with 50 no's and keep going.
Well,
So yeah.
today, I'm sure you can overcome challenges in your business because you know
Mm,
that you'll work through it and you can literally um, drive through the difficulties to find the solutions. What I was thinking about when you were telling the story about what you did, for some reason, you were kind of like I was when I was growing up. I didn't know any better. I just figured I had to
mm,
work as hard as possible and do whatever it takes, and I never give up. And if you get knocked down, you get up again. And so it was just what I was taught, that nothing comes easy, and you're going to have to work hard to succeed. And you may not be smarter than the next guy, but you can certainly outwork them. So that was kind of my
mm.
philosophy. I'm, and I don't think that philosophy works today as
Mm,
well. But I think whether it's with your kids or with your employees, the staff that you have working for you, there's some folks who do give up too soon, right?
yeah,
And they sometimes sometimes we as leaders give them the answer that they need too quickly without letting them struggle a little bit to find it. So I think there is a blend there as a leadership kind of characteristic to make sure that you give enough autonomy and enough authority to your employees. Use the employees as an example here, so that they can work through things themselves. Believe in them, tell them that they can do it, encourage them, help them along when they need help, but don't do the job for them. Allow them to have the experiences like you had to
yeah,
learn the lesson in a way that can stick with them. Because
yeah,
these two lessons you related were from much, much younger days, and
yeah,
yet they stuck with you, and they now are like a defining element of your own confidence and your own competence as a
yeah,
leader. And I respect that. I think that's tremendous. So good
yeah,
lesson to
yeah,
be learned
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, as we start to wrap up this conversation, Brendan, I'm enjoying it, so I'd like to have it go on, but let's wrap it up with a couple of questions that seem to be asked at the end of all my podcasts. So, one
Mhm.
of them is, you're a younger man, going back to those younger days you were talking about. Now, knowing what you know, what advice would you give yourself?
You know, I think I would still stick with just do what you know is right. You know what's right. Do the right thing and just keep going. And eventually it'll work out, because there's plenty of times where, it's easy for us to talk about what it was like back then, but when you're in the
Hmm.
middle of it, it's not that
Yeah,
easy. And
sure.
so I would love to be able to give myself advice, when I was going through that
Hmm.
back then and saying,
Yeah.
hey, it's going to be all right. You know, like, yeah, this is hard, but it's going to
Hmm.
be okay, and just
Yeah.
keep pushing and eventually it's all going to work out.
Well, I like the resilience part of that, but I also like the how you started it. Do what's right. And
Yeah.
I think my belief, my personal belief, is that we all have a moral compass inside of us that's probably similar to everyone else. Now, we've
Mm.
adapted those kind of moral values in our culture, maybe more than we should have, but I'll leave that for another discussion. Well, I think we know what's right. I think we all know that it's right to treat other people with mutual human respect. I think
Yeah.
we all know that it's right to have integrity and to be fair and to be gentle and kind and loving when we can and to be stern when we need to protect ourselves or our families, right? But all of those kinds of things of knowing what's right, I believe is something that will never really fail you. If you have that moral compass guiding you, um, I like to say it this way. It's the tagline for my company now. The high road leads to a better place. And
Mm,
I like to share that with people because it does always lead to a better place. And it's clearly, from your example, led you to a better place with what you're doing. So let's fast
yeah.
forward in the other direction. Let's imagine, because you're in California, why don't we say that we're drinking a glass of California wine and we're
Yep.
sitting somewhere in the giant sequoia forest and we're by ourselves talking about, the purpose of life and how things have gone and what we're most
Yeah.
proud of.
Yeah.
What will you tell me you're most proud of, Brendan?
Number one, family, 100% family.
Yeah.
So I'm tremendously proud of the life that my wife and I have built together, of our children, of my nieces and my nephews, like everybody, that's around me. So I mean, hands down, like the thing I am the most proud of ever is family.
Mm, right. Yeah.
Secondary to the family would just be the relationships that have been built over the years and the development of other people. And,
Mm,
watching somebody, like, we talked about the struggle, and watching somebody struggle with something and then
mhm,
seeing them come through on the other end and seeing like this person has actually developed, like they have changed for the better from here to here. And knowing that you had even a piece of that is just like incredibly rewarding. So I think just, knowing that, we talk about the high road and all that kind of stuff.
mhm,
And
mhm,
yeah, I mean, knowing that you're doing things the right way, that you're trying to influence people in the right way, and that you're helping people develop to become better and to be able to accomplish
mhm,
more and all of that stuff. Like that's incredibly rewarding.
mhm,
If we're looking at our business as well, like I'm hoping that at that point in the future, I'll be able to look back and say, hey, look at what we built. Look
mhm,
at what we built. DFA was going through all these changes and challenges, and you're trying to take a 120-year-old business and reinvent it to make it, work in the modern day. And
right.
I really, I'm hopeful that when we're sitting on that porch drinking wine, we're talking about, how it was we successfully reinvented it and made it successful and long term, and how it just basically made a positive impact on society.
Yeah, that's great because that's a collective impact, positive impact on society. And going back to the way you started it with a individual, kind of touching of another person in a positive way to bring them to a better place. In my coaching work, one of the things I enjoy the most in my life right now is just having that little bit of influence on another human being to
Mm,
help them to move in a positive direction. And so much of the time we're caught up in the challenges of the day, the projects that we do, the demands, the complexity we have to solve. And it's so important to remember that at the end of it all, we're not going to look back and think about the money we made or the projects we delivered. We're going to think about the individual lives we touched and how we grew together in a positive way to make something happen. And then how, as you said, I think very well, collectively, we've made a difference in the world. So yeah,
yeah.
well said, Brendan. Well said.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So thanks for being with us today. It's been
Yeah.
great having you on the program. It really has been. If someone was interested in getting in touch with your organizations or with you, how would they contact you?
Probably the website is the easiest. So either safefoodalliance.com or
Mm,
dfaofcalifornia.com. Either one will
okay,
work.
perfect.
DFA is the parent company that does the product
Mhm.
inspections and stuff like that. But for somebody that's looking to do laboratory testing or those types of things, that would
Mm,
just be safefoodalliance.com.
okay.
And then, of course, we also do the auditing. So that's called Safe
Mm,
Food Certifications. So we have got,
yeah.
yeah, we've got
Okay.
all of the above there. But yeah,
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thanks again. Look forward to staying in touch with you. When I have any questions about fruits and nuts, I'm calling you.
yeah, or farm animals. I got it all.
Or farm animals. I forgot about the farm animals. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. Thanks,
Brendan,
Wayne. Yeah.
All the best. God bless you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks to you. Thanks.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for being with us. If you like our conversations, please feel free to hit the subscribe and like buttons. And if you'd like to make comments, ask questions, or even explore being a guest on this program, you can reach out to us via email. It's wayne@greatroad.com. That's WAYNE at GR8ROAD.com. And until next time, always remember, the high road leads to a better place.